Hello, everyone. This is a pre-recorded spotlight on romance, and I'm so excited to have Karen Nappa with us. Karen is an Amazon best-selling author of seasoned BDSM romance with a happily ever after. Published in 2019, her work includes series such as Small Town Submission and Doms in Uniform. Is that two different books? Small Town Submission and then Doms in Uniform. Is that two different books?
Small Town Submission is actually a series
Oh,
of
okay.
4 books, and Doms in Uniform is also a series. It contains 4 books now, and there will be at least one more story in there.
Okay. Okay. So with over 20 books under your belt, Karen, you write
Mhm.
stories about seasoned protagonists navigating the complexities of love, trust, and power dynamics. Your books explore
Yes.
themes like healing from past heartbreak, rediscovering passion, and building meaningful connections, proving that love later in life is just as thrilling, fulfilling, and spicy as ever. Karen's journey as an author began when she noticed a gap in the market, stories featuring realistic, relatable characters over 40 years of age. Frustrated with the abundance of 20-something heroines and older, wealthy heroes, she decided to fill the void herself, and I am so glad you decided to do that, Karen. So,
Thank you.
how did you get started doing what you're doing? How did you get started with with this writing journey of yours?
Um, it started, I think, maybe in 2017 when I was just a reader on Goodreads, leaving reviews, and then another reader reached out to me and said, wow, your review was very insightful, and can we talk a bit about that? So we started talking and chatting first through Goodreads, and then we exchanged phone numbers and we started to chat more frequently. And she became actually a good friend. And then in, I think it was October 2018, we were both, she's a little over 10 years older than I am. And we were both so frustrated with the 20 something virgin trope that was really so prevalent at that time. So we were chatting a bit about writing our own stories, and it was actually a bit of a joke then for me. And then she sent me a text message stating, "I'm trapped at the laundromat. Wouldn't that be a great romance title?" Um, and we sort of started with that idea. So we began plotting that book, that story. Why would someone be trapped at a laundromat? And it became real, and it became a title, and it became a real book in April 2019.
Amazing. That is wonderful. And I'll tell you, you don't have to spend 5 minutes in a laundromat before you feel trapped. Okay. Well, let me ask you a couple questions, and you can kind of expand on that if you want. Um,
Sure.
you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what really drew you to writing romance with mature protagonists instead of the younger characters? Was it just that you couldn't relate to the younger characters, or
Well, yeah, it started like that. But then when I started writing these books, um, it became apparent to me that these mature characters, they have mileage, they have experiences, they have these deep emotional scars sometimes, which make them really interesting from a book writing, a romance writing perspective. And so it um, it started from something like a frustration, maybe, and then um, it became love. I fell in love with these older characters that are so amazing in trusting again, trying new things, um, maybe they have been divorced, maybe they are a widow, but they still have the courage to start a new chapter in life, which does really appeal to me.
Yes, I can relate to that 100%. I've been widowed now for 6 years, and, I did a little bit of online dating, but I was in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is not the best place to do that kind of thing. And now that I'm settled in Kentucky, it's probably time to put myself out there again. How do the themes of love and intimacy and vulnerability change when characters are in their 40s, 50s, and beyond?
I think they will become better because when you are a bit older, you have you've tried some things. You know your body, you know what makes you tick. You should know your emotional triggers, which makes being intimate with another person, um, well, it makes it better, and it makes it more. Um, it's less the butterflies in your belly thing you have when you are, well, maybe a teenager or in your early 20s, and you see something who is attractive to you. When you are more mature, you of course, attraction is a big part of falling in love, but it's also, well, at least from my experience, um, as I get older, I'm getting more interested in who are you as a person and how do you react and what are your experience and how do they maybe reflect on my experiences or maybe enhance them or maybe they are totally different. And I think when you are younger, you're not as able to see all of the person. You just see the outside part of the person. So when it comes to intimacy, I think you know your own body better, so you can better explain what you like and what you don't like, but you will also be more attuned to the other person and more able to maybe notice small signs that you wouldn't have noticed when you were 20, which, in my opinion, makes intimacy much, much better.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And bringing that into your characters, I think can be very revealing, especially if a younger person is reading about the older person. I remember, I think I was in my 40s when we had a teenage granddaughter. And I don't know, I was talking with her mother, and you know how girls talk as they're getting dinner ready and everything. And she overheard us talking about me being intimate with my husband, and she goes, "Oh, no, that's horrible," because she could not envision somebody in their 40s
Yeah,
even being intimate with anyone. I mean, like, what, you hit 30 and your sex drive goes away? I don't think so.
yeah, yeah,
But, younger people, I don't think they can really relate to older people having these same, desires and I agree with you when you're saying that your vulnerability changes. I think that a person becomes more confident in themselves, and maybe they don't take things quite so personally, like an offhand comment that
mm,
might get you all excited when you're in your 20s or your teens or something. It just is kind of like water off a duck's back when you get older because you realize a person isn't really attacking you necessarily.
true. Yeah.
So, what challenges do you think your mature characters face in love stories that younger couples might not be challenged by those? They might not even be aware of those challenges. And how do you tackle those in your writing?
Well, what? a big challenge for most people is when they are when it isn't their first relationship, because that's usually the case. I don't think there are many people over 50 that didn't have any sexual experience at all. So I think a big challenge is not to compare. I think a big challenge is when the previous experience wasn't as great, to let go of that and to trust again. Um, so I think when it comes to challenges, it's mostly that. Um, and how do I tackle those things in writing? Well, I drag my characters through hell, kicking and screaming, and finally they give in.
That's great. That's uh, you know, we always I know to be a good author, you have to be a really mean person sometimes to your
Uh,
characters.
yeah, yeah,
But that's really nice to know that in your writing, your characters aren't just ready to just leap into another relationship. That,
often not.
they
No.
have their
Yeah. Or
hesitations.
yeah, or if they are, they when in the beginning of the book they seemed ready to jump in and go ahead, then usually at the dark moment, it will usually be that person who actually isn't ready, who is has been masking their pain and not confronting it. So that's I think that's another thing. I i have quite some romantic suspense where the conflict is external, but I do love internal conflict. And
Absolutely. I agree with you
yeah,
completely.
yeah, and I think with more mature characters, it's easier to have that internal struggle because they have lived longer and they have experienced more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know how it is these days with young people. Maybe that's why I like writing historical is I don't have to figure out what's what. But when I was growing up, and I have thought about this a lot, was I actually being coached into the expectations of you need to go out there and find yourself a man and get married? Or was that an assumption that I made that wasn't being um, silently coached to me? I think it might have been a little bit of both. You kind of like listen to your parents when you're
Mm.
younger, and then when you hit your teens and your late teens and your early 20s, a lot of that stuff that has been milled around in there for, since you were an infant, um, becomes a truth. And
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know if it was my parents' expectations or if it was my interpretation, but to me, I believed I had to go out there, find a man, and get married. I happen to have been very fortunate in finding the perfect man for me. We had 45 wonderful, sometimes turbulent years together before he passed away. He was 18 years
Mm.
older than me, so you know, my parents really were not happy with my choice initially. It took them about 10 years to come around to the realization that this was the right man for me. But I sometimes wonder, in retrospect, I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I had not had that either self-imposed expectation or what was being an expectation from my parents. What would my life have been? Would I have I mean, I hardly ever played I never played the field, if you wanna know the truth,
Mm.
and, you know, would I have made different choices in my life? I have no clue if I would have or not. But I think you're right, Karen, in bringing these mature characters because we do, as you I don't think young kids have that much introspection, but as we
Mm,
get older, we do have that
yeah,
introspection, and we bring that into relationships.
we
So,
do. Yeah, absolutely.
and that can either make it or break it, I suppose. Um,
Yeah.
how do you balance realism and fantasy in portraying your mature romances, especially when it comes to the physical connection and the emotional intimacy?
Yeah, that's a hard part. I have a note in the beginning of my book um, that stipulates this is not a how-to on BDSM practice because especially when it comes to the intimate moments, including BDSM play, um, it's all based on either things I have done myself or I have been a part of or I have been a witness of. So when I write about fire play, when I write about bondage, when I write about impact play, I do know how it feels to be bound. I do know how it feels to be whipped, to be caned. I hate canes, they are horrible. um, give me a paddle and a whip every day, but I don't like canes. Anyhow, it I think because it's written from someone who has felt those things, I put a lot of realism in my books. Um, but then the characters, well, they are real for me because I talk with them and I I discuss with them and sometimes I curse them because they never do what I expect them to do.
Characters have a tendency to do that, don't they?
It's
It's just
it's
I've had horrible arguments with my characters.
and people who do not write, they don't understand. They say, "Well, you made this person up. How can he not do what you want?" Yeah, well, it's he doesn't. He just doesn't. But I'm getting off topic. um, so realism and fantasy. Um, so these characters are fake. Fake? No, they are figments of my imagination. That's maybe a better word. They're not fake. I think they are real. But they are imaginary people doing things I did or someone in the same room as me did. And I I think the biggest danger is people can feel that people can when they read they can relate, especially people who are in the BDSM lifestyle. They tell me all the time it's so realistic. So I think the biggest danger is people thinking, well, I want to try BDSM and I'm going to reenact something in her books, which you shouldn't do. You should go, if you want to explore the lifestyle, you should go to a munch, meet people. When you are there, they will probably tell you where are safe clubs where you can explore safely. I wouldn't recommend going to a BDSM club in your neighborhood right away. First visit a munch, which is, maybe I should explain it for the people who are not in the lifestyle. It's basically a non-sexual, vanilla type of venue where people come together, have a drink, have a bite to eat, and talk about BDSM lifestyle. And that way, that's a very safe way into the lifestyle and trying new things. Um, Please don't take my book and think, okay, now I know how to do bondage and do it. Because especially with bondage, you can, when you put a knot on a wrong place, it can really lead to horrible injuries.
Well, I'm glad that you clarified that, Karen.
Hmm.
So, so you bring the realism in from experience, but the fantasy is that these are imaginary characters
And stories, yeah.
and stories. Okay, so
Yeah.
um, in what ways do you feel that mature love stories offer a fresh and powerful perspective to readers of all ages?
I think these stories will mostly appeal to, when I look at the demography of my readers, it will mostly appeal to mostly women over 40. But I do have younger fans, younger people who read the stories. And I think these younger people often are already in a BDSM relationship. So they are attracted to my stories because of that element in the stories. And then they get hooked on the emotional depth that my characters bring.
Excellent. This is excellent. So, now, are you traditionally published or self-published
I
or
think it's
both?
a, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed. I'm not self-published,
Okay.
but I'm not with one of the big publishing
Okay.
houses.
Okay.
So
More either the smaller ones or a hybrid.
yeah,
Uh,
I did try self-publishing, which I found a horrible experience because being a self-publishing author, I know a lot of my author friends are self-published, and I have the utmost respect for those people because you are basically running a company and you are responsible for everything, for getting the books out there, the marketing, the branding, the not just the writing, the editing. It's you have to be such a versatile person to be able to do that. And especially in this market where we have so many AI generated books that are taking up space on the retailer platforms and on the social media advertisement, it's really, really hard for self publishing authors, especially now, I think. So, a big respect for people who still do it and still can manage it. Um, I did it for maybe 2 years. When I started out writing, I was with a publishing company called Blushing Books. Um, Google it, especially when you Google it in combination with New York Times and Out of the Woodshed, because we didn't have a great experience with that company, and about 70 authors, at the same moment, about 70 authors left, including me, including Maren Smith, who has been such a big help to me, like a mentor when I started writing. So the first four books were with Blushing Books, and then we found some things out we weren't very happy about, so we left. I'm not going into what happened there. If you're interested, just Google it. But basically, it meant either trying to get with another publishing house or self-published. And I tried it. And it just wasn't for me. I'm not a person to run a company. I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. So about 2 years into the self-publishing thing, I was about ready to go back to Blushing Books. Even knowing what I knew then, I was thinking about going back. And then Maren announced, I'm going to be a publisher. And she started Rattled Romance. And I immediately jumped on that bandwagon. And I got, I think I was the second author she signed up. And she was a publisher for a few years, and then she had a terrible personal tragedy with losing her husband and her father on the same day.
Ooh, that would be hard.
Yeah, that was so hard, and it was so difficult because um, I, I I wanted to help and I wasn't able. The physical distance was too great, too big, too large, and it was so hard to see her struggle. And then Rajana Jameson took over the company. She was already the editor, the chief editor, and she took over Red Hot Romance, and she now has 4 different publishing brands, which publishes my books and a lot of other books. So, but it's not like the big um, publishing houses. It's still pretty niche. Focused on they are largely focused on the DS lifestyle and with a big emphasis on daddy dom romance books.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering on the traditional side, with you writing characters that are more mature, did you find resistance from publishers or even from readers um, eh, because of the mature characters?
Mm, no, neither. I think, well, readers is easy because there is so much reading material available. And when you don't like my books, well, you don't buy them, buy another book. And sometimes someone chooses my book and leaves a bad review. Um, Often not a review, just a rating, a 1 or a 2-star rating, which I think it's a pity because when you explain why you didn't like the book, it will be easier for other readers who agree with you not to choose my book. Um, but I don't remember, I read every single review, whether it's a 5-star review or 1-star review or a 3-star review. It doesn't matter to me because reviews matter. And even when reviews are critical, I, I enjoy reading them. I'm always very thankful when someone leaves their thoughts on my writing.
Well, I think
Be-
that helps
yeah,
us as writers
yeah,
to understand our audience better.
yeah,
Who is our audience? And it's just as important to know who is not our
yeah.
audience.
True. That's absolutely true. And also, for me as a reader, maybe a 1-star review from somebody complaining about anal sex in a book. It's a trigger for someone. It's not for me. So maybe for me, it's an accolade for that book to read it because of something another person was grossed out about. So, um, but back to your question. um, so I haven't had any critical reviews about people not liking my characters being mature or writing stuff. I have a book with which is controversial because the female lead is a transgender woman, and the male lead is submissive and 60 plus and over 20 years older than she is. So there are a lot of controversial items in that book, and there's no lashback about that at all in the reviews.
Okay. So did you notice any resistance from publishers, or did you only go to publishers that you knew would be attracted to your writing?
I think it's the latter because when I first submitted my book to Blushing, Maren, who was mentoring me back then, told me they are your genre is just great for them. They will love it. And we never discussed the maturity of my characters. Neither Maren and I did, and neither the publisher did. Back then, the publisher did. So, and then when I went over to Maren, Maren loves my writing, so that wasn't a problem at all. And now with Rajana, it's just when I submit a book, she will, mostly in hindsight, shoot me a message. Oh, is this later in later in life love again? And usually my answer is yes, because I haven't have written full length books with characters. One of my books has a male character who is 28, and that's absolutely the youngest in my full length novels. I do have a few, you can download a few freebies on my website, and I have a few young adult stories there because those are basically people who appear in the longer novels and then I go back in time. I did it actually with Small Town Submission. Small Town Submission is a series of 4 books describing 4 siblings who each have their own romance, and there's also a bit of a suspense arc going through all the 4 books. And I gave out a box set, Small Town Submission, with containing all those 4 books, but also a short story about each of those main characters. And those are more coming of age, young adults kind of stories happening 15 years before the actual book happened. So, but basically, when she asked me, "Is this later in life?" My answer is usually yes, it is.
Okay. So, I'm wondering, are there any particular tropes or storylines that you enjoy subverting when writing about your seasoned characters falling in love? Is there a thread of a
Not,
theme or anything through your writing?
no, no, not really, because I try to portray so diverse as possible. I try to be so diverse as possible with portraying the BDSM lifestyle.
Hmm.
So I have sadist, I have dominance, I have 24/7 total power exchange masters. Male, I have a male book, Herding Hunter, out. So I try to be as diverse as possible in that regard. And I'm getting off track. What was your question?
Well, I was asking more along if there were tropes that you
Oh, tropes. Yeah, that was the question. Yeah. So I don't think there's a particular trope that will be better with more. Well, maybe friends to lovers might be better with more mature characters because um, when they have been apart for 2 or 3 years, it's maybe not as the character development isn't as excited. So maybe maybe that, but I think I have enemies to lovers, I have friend to lovers, I have close proximity, I have relationships of convenience, I have uh, I don't have a surprise baby yet.
I was gonna, that's really funny you mentioned that because I was thinking, well, mature audience, you probably wouldn't have, secret baby or anything like that, but you could. I mean, I do know women who have become pregnant in their late 40s, early 50s, and
Yeah,
that is a surprise.
yeah, it is. It is. I um, I do have a freebie that has a surprise baby where she is indeed thinking she has been menopausing and then she has become pregnant. But it's maybe not the most. It's maybe not a perfect trope for this kind of books,
Right, right.
or maybe
Well,
with an older child.
yeah, well, yeah, with an older child, you could do that. But, it's really kind of surprising whether you're talking about a young hero and heroine, or if you're talking about more mature people. The tropes that you mentioned, I mean, those can be attractive to anybody who
Yeah,
likes enemies
yeah,
to lover, or they like friends to lover. I mean, they will go after those because of the trope.
yeah,
And how you tell those stories is going to be different because you bring in um a different type of lifestyle. So
yeah,
that is
yeah.
very interesting. Um, do you approach writing character growth or conflict any different from how it would be approached with younger characters?
I don't think so because I think it's more the personal style and preference of the author, whether they are plotters or pantsers, whether they have really these character sheets with height and eye color and hair color and maybe pictures and mood boards and things like that. I think it doesn't really matter what age the characters are, um, whether the way you write them or whether the way you create your stories or do your plotting. Um, it's more, well, like I said at the start of our talk, it's more about um, um, the emotional depth, which will be harder to find when you write a younger person.
Okay. Okay. So do you have a tendency to have a message or an emotional takeaway that you hope readers carry with them after reading your novels?
I think at least that love and lust and sex isn't just for young people. Um, I think the what you told about your granddaughter, it's so typical. Um, Old people still can have feelings of lust and sexual attraction, and that doesn't it doesn't go away with age. And so I think that's one thing I hope people take away from my books. And I'm, well, obviously I write romance, so my books end on a happily ever after. And I think that's also something which for me is very important, because especially when we look now at the goings on in the world, you can easily get depressed. And I I don't mind drama in my books, whether if I'm reading a book or writing a book, but at least I want to end on a high note.
Absolutely. Well, and that's important to romance anyway. If you don't
Yeah,
have either a happily ever after or a happy for now, you're not really writing romance, you're just writing a love story.
yeah, true. Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's true.
so if people have any questions, how might they get in touch with you?
There's a contact form on my website, which is karennappa.com. And they can also email me, or they can. I'm on a lot of social media. I have TikTok, I have Facebook, I have Instagram. So they can reach out there to me.
And is all of
Uh,
that under Karen Nappa?
yeah, it's all Karen Nappa, um, or author Karen Nappa.
Okay.
So, and there's when they want to find all my links, they can go to Linktree and then slash Karen Nappa, and there they can find every way to just reach me, find me, um, subscribe to my newsletter, whatever they want.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate this so much. This has been very informative.
Thank you for the invite, and I really enjoyed it.